What if someone told you back in the 80s or 90s that you'd be hailing a cab on your touchscreen phone in the not-so-distant future? You'd think it'd be impossible. Well, that wasn't until 2002 when someone came up with this exact idea, and by 2009, Uber came into being, and other online cab services followed suit. Today, online cab service apps are a staple on many people's phones. Well, in May of 2017, 34-year-old Grant Nelson was an Uber driver, alongside juggling 2 more jobs. When he got a request for a ride that was a few blocks away from his location, he couldn't say no. But 2 minutes into the ride, Grant would lose his life after he was mercilessly attacked by the very person who hailed that taxi. The case of Grant Nelson is so tragic, and the saddest part is that it could have all been avoided. But the most unsettling part of this whole case is the person who committed the crime, because who they were and what caused them to snap, well, no one saw it coming. Welcome to True Crime Stories. If you're new here, I'm your host, Ty Knotts, and I post new true crime documentaries every single week. If you're watching this video, that probably means you're interested in true crime, and that's pretty much all we do here. So be sure to hit that subscribe button. It's completely free and it just lets you know when I post new videos. It was Memorial Day on May 30th of 2017, a little after 3:20 a.m. It was the middle of the night. A condominium complex located on the 7200 block of Touhy Avenue in Skokie, Illinois, was exactly how you'd picture an apartment complex at 3 in the morning. There was no hustle and bustle. People were probably snoozing after the busy Memorial Day gatherings with their families, and the lobby and parking lot were quiet. But not for long. The apartment complex security guards noticed a gray 2014 Hyundai Sonata making its way into the parking lot. But as soon as the driver's side door opened, any semblance of peace was shattered. A badly injured man, holding his bleeding hand and chest, was seen staggering his way towards the condominium lobby. As soon as he got there, he started banging on the lobby doors and incessantly pressing the buzzer for any help. Within seconds, this condominium complex and the people residing in it were awoken by buzzing sounds and banging. The badly injured man also screamed at the top of his lungs, causing almost all the residents of the apartment complex to wake up with a start. Several witnesses heard the man yelling the words, "Help me, I'm going to die." Some of the residents sprung into action and called 911, and within minutes, 911 was getting littered with calls, asking for help and emergency services at this specific apartment complex in Skokie. Witnesses also saw the car pull out from the parking lot, but they had bigger things to worry about. The man was in grave condition when the investigators and emergency services arrived, as he lay on the ground, barely clinging to life. Luckily, though, he was still able to talk to the police, which is just incredible. The injured man was able to tell the police that he was an Uber driver and that he picked up a passenger from a local Walmart. He proceeded to tell the police that the passenger launched an attack on him as soon as they entered the vehicle. All the while, he was fighting for his life. The man was in terrible condition, with injuries to his torso, arms, head, and chest. He was teetering on the line of life and death, and he was immediately loaded into an ambulance and taken to St. Francis Hospital. It was a short drive away from the scene, but tragically, due to the severity of his wounds, the man did not survive, and he lost his life at the hospital. The paramedics couldn't do anything. This man was hanging on to the last threads of life, and sadly, he succumbed to his wounds. As tragic as the man's death was, the investigators had 2 main tasks on their hands. First, they had to identify this man and notify his family of his passing. And second, they needed to catch the perpetrator. Who was the person who drove this man to his untimely and brutal death? And most importantly, where was the assailant now? Were they attacking other people at that moment? The police needed to find the wrongdoer immediately. Well, a bunch of police officers got on this task, whereas the rest of them got to know who the victim was. He was 34-year-old Grant Nelson. Grant Nelson, an Uber driver, had lost his life so brutally and within minutes. But who was he? Well, Grant was born in 1982 in Willamette, Illinois. He loved classical music, and he and his sister Alex had this in common. They loved to listen to music together, talk about it, and discover new bands or artists together. It was kind of their thing. Grant was also passionate about acting. He did some side gigs and tried to make his mark in acting, and he also had a headshot produced for his acting resume. He also loved watching movies, partly for acting inspiration, and he adored animals. Grant's brother Todd said that Grant was a pretty level-headed guy. He described Grant as a kind soul in a cruel world, and he aspired to be more like his brother. Grant was genuine, empathetic, and loyal. Jeff Teal, Grant's friend since high school, said that he could always count on Grant to make him smile. Grant was with his family just hours before he accepted that Uber ride. It was Memorial Day, and Grant spent the evening with his family eating good food and enjoying the company of his loved ones. Just a few hours ago, Grant was happy, smiling, and most of all alive. But now, he was gone, and he took a piece of his family with him, and they would never be the same again. But let's get back to May 30th, because as tragic and harrowing as Grant's passing was, it was up to the detectives to give him and his family justice. And it didn't take the investigators long to spot a trail that led them straight to Grant's killer. And it all started with a Cubs sweatshirt. Well, a red-stained Cubs sweatshirt that was found discarded on the road. If you remember, when Grant was banging on the lobby doors for help after getting out of his car drove away. The detectives assumed that it was the passenger who used the car to flee the scene. Luckily, the car was found nearby, crashed into a median. And, well, let's just say that it looked like a mess. It was clear to the police that Grant was attacked in his car. Everything was red, and the back door of the car was also smeared with red. Fortunately, it looked like the perpetrator had left a trail for the detectives to follow. While some officers got to searching the car for any evidence, the rest of the squad spotted a discarded Cubs sweatshirt near the car, and it was also smeared in red stains, which only added to the police's horror. Whatever Grant endured during that very short but very brutal attack was harrowing. As the investigators rounded a corner, they noticed something, or rather someone. A young girl was crouched under an air conditioning unit in a building, and she was only wearing leggings and underwear. It didn't take long for the detectives to realize that the sweatshirt they'd found belonged to this girl. But what astounded the police was what the girl had in her hands. She was holding a machete in one hand and a knife in the other. The detectives were dumbfounded, partly because of the weapons she had in her hand, but mainly because she looked so young. She didn't look nearly as old as Grant, but the investigators had other more important things at hand, and one of them was disarming her. Well, it was harder than they thought, because as the detectives approached her and demanded she drop her weapons, the girl ignored them and wasn't letting things go. This left the detectives with no choice but to subdue her with a taser, which caused her to drop the weapons, and the investigators were able to handcuff her. Meanwhile, the officers in the car pulled out Grant's phone and checked his Uber app. They wanted to know who the last passenger was, and when they checked Grant's history, the name on the app was Eliza. Well, it was a first name, and it was enough, but within minutes, the mysterious girl was identified as Eliza Wasni. And get this, she was only 16 years old. A 16-year-old girl was the one who brutally attacked Grant in his car at 3 in the morning, a teenager. The detectives were blindsided by these facts. They needed answers right away. Why would a teenager attack Grant so viciously? What was the reason? Well, the only way to find things out was to talk to the teenager herself. And it turns out Eliza Wasni attended Taft High School, and she lived with her mom, who was a single parent on the north side of Chicago. Eliza also attended a therapeutic day school, and she had a very private life, and her social media was about as normal as it gets. She had a bunch of pictures of herself, and her About Me wrote, "I will always be myself," and absolutely nothing appeared unusual. Eliza was also registered on Kids Casting, a talent hunting website for child actors. She had a few pictures on there as well, so by all accounts, 16-year-old Eliza was a seemingly normal teenage girl. The police also found no previous criminal history, and nothing else to suspect she had a single ounce of bad blood in her. It was all so confusing, and the detectives knew that they had to backtrack. They remembered Grant telling them that he picked Eliza up from a local Walmart, so that was as good a place as any to start. But when the investigators checked their surveillance footage, they got their upteenth surprise of the day. Eliza was seen walking into Walmart at about 2:36 a.m. She was seen walking into the store, picking up a knife and a machete, ripping them out of their packaging, and walking straight out the exit without paying for them. Eliza literally stole the murder weapons from Walmart. And if that wasn't astonishing enough, no one stopped her from walking out of Walmart with the stolen goods. It wasn't like she was hiding the things in her sleeves or shirt or something. She was seen walking with the machete and knife in her hands while she casually and calmly just made her way out of Walmart. Ironically, Eliza hailed 3 Uber rides that night, her inexplicable adventures starting at about 1:25 a.m. on May 30th. The first Uber ride took her to a train station in DePlain, Illinois. Now, we don't know what she did there, but almost an hour later at 2:18, she booked another Uber, and this one took her to Walmart in Lincolnwood, this being the Walmart from which she shoplifted. After walking out of the Walmart, Eliza walked around a bit before she requested her final Uber ride with none other than Grant at 3:18 a.m. Grant was a few blocks away from Eliza's location, and he accepted the ride for some extra cash, this being just a few short hours after having dinner with his family. Within minutes, though, the ride turned deadly, and Eliza, out of nowhere, attacked Grant with the weapons that she'd stolen from Walmart. Grant suffered almost half a dozen wounds, and that was when he made an abrupt stop at the apartment complex, practically jumped out of his car and screamed for help before tragically passing away. Eliza, after the attack, got into the driver's seat, but she only got so far before crashing into a median. That was when she got out, discarded her sweatshirt, but still had the weapons in her hands. She made a stop at a building on the 7300 block of Lincoln Avenue, where she was later discovered and arrested by the police. Now, there are a lot of things that are very unsettling about this case. First of all, why was Eliza even allowed to go out in the middle of the night? What was she doing? Where were her parents, for one? And was she looking for a victim, or did something provoke her to do the unimaginable? Keep in mind, Eliza took 3 Uber rides, and the first 2 drivers were unharmed. So what happened during that final ride that led Eliza to attack Grant? Secondly, why didn't anyone at Walmart stop Eliza with the stolen items? Even the CCTV footage showed 2 or 3 people in close vicinity to Eliza, and none of them reported her for shoplifting. If only someone had reported her then, the detectives would have come and arrested Eliza for shoplifting, and maybe the attack on Grant could have been avoided. Well, after the police arrested Eliza, she refused to explain anything. She wouldn't reveal her motive and really clammed up in general, hardly speaking to the detectives at all. The investigators needed to talk to people who knew Eliza to figure out why she did what she did, because the murderer, a teenager, was not cooperating. When the detectives got to know that Eliza attended a therapeutic day school, their ears perked up. They wondered, could Eliza be battling some sort of mental health issue that caused her to spiral and commit such a heinous crime? Now, I'm not saying that people with mental illnesses get a free pass to do anything they please, but in Eliza's case, the police needed to uncover the motive so that they could at least make sense of what was going on. According to Mark Grishaber, principal of Taft High School, Eliza was in and out of therapeutic schools all the time. What's interesting is her case manager even told the principal that she shouldn't have even been enrolled in that school in the first place. So why was she eventually enrolled? Well, we'll never know. We also don't know if the investigators conducted any toxicology reports or any psychiatric evaluations on Eliza. And even if they have, the results of these evaluations at least haven't been made public, which makes this case all the more frustrating. But it is understandable considering she's a minor, or at least she was at the time of the case. But one thing that the police did rule out was the possibility of self-defense. Eliza had no defensive wounds on her body, and nothing pointed towards the fact that Grant made her uncomfortable during the ride, or that there was a reason that Eliza attacked him in the first place. But if Grant didn't provoke Eliza in some way, then what did? If Eliza thought that she could get out of this by staying quiet, that wasn't going to happen. She was going to stand in front of a court and face the consequences of her actions, regardless of her reasoning. Eliza was arrested and charged with first-degree murder on May 31st, just a day after she committed the crime. She was kept at a juvenile facility, and it was ultimately decided that she would be tried as an adult, despite her obvious struggles with mental health and quite possibly her previous trauma. Speaking of being behind bars, Eliza was not an ideal prisoner. She racked up over 450 violations while being held in prison. The violations ranged from unauthorized movement to attacking prison guards to attacking other prisoners. It was also reported that Eliza would repeatedly bite, kick, and strike any prisoner or prison guard if they tried to touch her. This girl was insane, and likely clinically so. To add to that, Eliza also resorted to harming herself in prison multiple times and had to be taken to Stroger's Hospital in Cook County about 6 times. At one point, she even wrote the word "die" in big red letters on the wall of her prison cell after harming herself, and it was all just so disturbing. To top this off, a fellow detainee also came forward and shared some very eerie details about Eliza that she'd learned after being left alone with her. According to this person, Eliza wanted to go on a killing spree, and she had loads of information and knowledge on how to dispose of body parts without getting caught. This was highly alarming behavior for a teenager. I mean, who in their right mind fantasizes about harming people and getting away with it? Now, watching true crime shows and spitballing ideas around, that's one thing. Those are complete innocent fantasies. Usually. But this girl actually wanted to carry out those crimes, seemingly just for the thrill. There's something seriously wrong with this kid. But the prosecution also offered a plea deal to avoid going through the painful process of a trial. And to my surprise, in August of 2020, Eliza Wasni, who was now 19, accepted their offer. After speaking with prosecutors, Eliza pleaded guilty to the first-degree murder of 34-year-old Grant Nelson. On August 20th of 2020, she was ultimately sentenced to 27 years in prison. Now, it's great that Eliza spared the court the trouble of a trial, but one question still remained. Why? Why did she do this to Grant? During the hearings and even the sentencing, Eliza kept her head down and didn't converse with anyone. If anything, she only ever interacted with her mom by smiling at her during the hearings in the courtroom, but she never once gave any indication about why she claimed Grant's life. Now, Eliza will probably get out of prison in her 40s, so she'll still have a lot of life left to live. But even though she's behind bars right now, you can't help but feel unsettled about her being released when we don't really know why she harmed Grant so callously in the first place. Grant's family primarily blames Walmart for their son's death. And I mean, can you blame them? There were a handful of Walmart employees and security workers when Eliza walked in and basically stole the murder weapons in front of everyone. Surely someone must have seen Eliza doing this, but even if they did not report it to the police. They literally just let her walk out the front door. Where were the security personnel during this? If it's their job to do anything at all, it's monitor the exits. At the end of July of 2017, just 2 months after Grant's passing, the Nelson family sued Walmart along with Allied Universal and Monterey Security Consultants. These were the companies that provided security services to Walmart. Walmart, on the other hand, stressed that the store officials did alert a third-party security agency to a possible shoplifting incident. But even if they did, we all know by now that nothing was done to stop Eliza. Now, whether this is true or not, who knows? It kind of feels like Walmart board members probably just trying to pass the buck, but that's just me being cynical. There's really no evidence to prove this whatsoever. But as of making this video, there have been no further updates about the Walmart lawsuit, so we don't know if the Nelson family was successful or if the charges were eventually just dropped. Either way, Grant's funeral was held on June 2nd of 2017, and as you can guess, everyone was bereaved. Grant's sister Alex was still in denial that her older brother was even gone. She felt like she was still waiting for Grant to come walking through the door any minute and flash his $1 million smile at her, but this never happened. We can only hope that Grant's loved ones can move on with their lives after this devastating loss, which is way easier said than done because their whole world's shattered in a matter of hours, showing everyone just how cruel and uncertain the future can be sometimes. The attack on Grant infuriated and scared many online cab drivers, and they all took to their social media to rage out, and they especially targeted Eliza's social media with their rage. Everyone was just bitter, and they didn't want Eliza to get away with a slap on the wrist just because she was a teenager, even though she luckily was tried as an adult. Some comments were downright violent. People suggested that Illinois bring the death penalty back in Eliza's case or give her the harshest sentence possible. The public was seething with anger, and rightfully so because the comments were getting so threatening and violent that Eliza's Facebook was deactivated shortly after, which is probably for the best. Fighting violence with more violence rarely ends well. This case is frustrating on so many levels. The number one reason being, we still have no idea why Eliza did what she did. This drives me nuts when convicted criminals do this because, you already got caught. You already got stuck with a prison sentence, in her case, guaranteed 27 years. Why not at least explain what you did? Even if you just did it for the thrill of it, what's the harm in just saying it at this point? I guess more than anything, it's likely just some kind of power move. Some think that mental health may have had a hand in this case, and that certainly makes the most sense. But investigators haven't come up with any official motive yet, so it could be anything. But I'm sure that we can all agree that this was heartless, cruel, and senseless. As far as the official details go, Eliza and Grant didn't even know each other, so they were strangers, which adds such a terrifying layer to this whole case. Yes, stranger danger is a thing, but teenagers committing horrific and unspeakable crimes that lead to death? If that doesn't send chills down your spine, I don't know what will. This was all just so sudden, so unexpected, and unnecessarily cruel. Usually, it's the other way around, and the unsuspecting and unaware teens are the targets of monsters with vicious intentions. But this case turned the tables rather quickly, and it left everyone feeling helpless and in fear of their lives. Cases like this can't help but make your skin crawl. It begs the question, are we ever truly safe? And as scary as it may seem, I think the answer is a resounding no. Thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of True Crime Stories. I wanted to give a special thank you to a couple channel members, including Thomas Howell and Jennifer Sauer. If you also want to become a member of the channel, you'll gain access to new videos sometimes days or weeks before they're uploaded to the public. And it is a great way to support the channel and help out. And I appreciate every single one of you guys that have done that. We just hit 100 members this past week, and I'm so appreciative of you guys. Thank you so much. But also, don't forget, we have True Crime Stories t-shirts now available, and you can grab one of those from the link down in the description. But as always, if you enjoyed this video, check out this other interesting case I covered, and don't forget to subscribe. It's totally free and it just keeps you up to date with all my future videos. But my name is Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.